Tonight, a new study is raising questions, a lot of questions among parents of children diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Researchers from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention finding disparities between white and black children. The study shows black children appear to be more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD and other learning disabilities than white kids. But CDC researchers say they don't know why, and their findings are opposite of what has long been believed, that white children suffer from ADHD in greater numbers than minority children. One possible reason for the change, access to health care, appears to be greater for white children than blacks, and therefore increasing the number of diagnoses. Also, parents of white children may be more likely to seek out a diagnosis of ADHD than black children. ADHD in children, the disparity in diagnosis, is our spotlight tonight. Joining me now is Dr. Jen Caudle, a family physician in Philadelphia. Jen, welcome to the program.
Thanks so much.
So this study from the CDC really drew my attention because of the belief that white children suffer more than black children from the disorder, and now the study says that's the opposite.
Right. This really is a change. You're right about that. And really where it's come from is statistically and based on the studies we've had in the past, white children were, according to our statistics, diagnosed with ADHD more. So now we have a study, as you mentioned, that suggests that actually black children are being diagnosed with ADHD more. And that is a big change. It actually caught my eye as well.
Researchers admit they don't know why the change in the findings, but they point to maybe the possibility of lack of access to health care. Could that be one reason?
Well, it's interesting that you talk about lack of access to health care, because often that's one of the reasons used to explain maybe in the past why more white children had been diagnosed with ADHD as opposed to black children. Maybe a lack of access to care, maybe cultural differences and how behavior is viewed, or cultural differences with health care, things like that. But the most important thing is that there still really are questions. We know that this survey that was done is a survey, which means that it's parents and people reporting the diagnosis and behavior of their children. Apparently, it was not necessarily confirmed whether the children's charts said that or not. Either way, we certainly need more research, we need more studies, we need more data. And yeah, I think we need to understand better why all of a sudden now we're reporting more black children being diagnosed with ADHD. I agree with that.
You talk about the cultural differences. I mean, there's probably a time when a lot of black parents would just write a child off as just being a bad kid or a kid who needs more discipline, and not necessarily go and get that ADHD diagnosis. And now that seems to be changing.
Well, so the situation you mentioned as a black woman, I guess I can relate to that, and so I'll speak specifically about myself. I can see how that could happen from my own personal experiences. I'm reluctant to extrapolate that to all black people, because of course we all have different experiences. But I do think that the idea of cultural differences and things like that sort of encompasses a lot of the things that you're talking about, how different groups of people look at behavior, how different groups of people access healthcare and why they access healthcare. Also socioeconomic indices and indicators and things like that. With so many things in this country and with regards to health, and especially when it comes to race, they're often multi sort of factorial issues. There's not usually one thing that's causing a change or a thing that we're seeing. My anticipation, or rather what I expect, is that this is probably the case here too.
Sure. And then there's just the overall stigma on no matter what your color of getting an ADHD diagnosis. A parent, may not want to put that stigma on their child, because then it goes through the school system, it spreads to their friends, and they may not want that to happen, right?
Well, there's certainly stigma with things like ADHD as well as other conditions, whether it's behavioral issues, whether it's mental illness, whether it's so many different things. And I'm not saying that because they're necessarily related, but because we know certain health conditions do have stigma. It's one of the reasons why I think, this is a really important study that was released to re-raise our attention about ADHD, and also to talk about the different groups of people that are affected. But also, it just reminds us to be conscious, to be thoughtful, and to educate not only ourselves as healthcare providers, I'm speaking for the doctors, but also our patients, right? This is something that needs global awareness, and this is really an opportunity for that, is how I think about it.
Yeah, that's how I see it too. I mean, when you get these kind of studies that kind of turn conventional wisdom on their head, it really gives you a moment to think and an opportunity to talk. So that's what we're doing here. Dr. Jen Caudle, thank you for joining me from Philadelphia.
Thank you.